Hey, my name's Bethany. Thank you so much for joining me today. The project that we are going to be working on today is this Neva hat. Isn't it so cute? Don't let those color changes intimidate you though. They're much easier than they look. And in this video, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks of how to change colors and how to make them line up and how to keep them from getting tangled. So let's get going.
The tools that you need to make this hat are you need 3 colors of medium weight yarn. I am working with a yarn called Mighty Stitch by Knit Picks, and you can find a link to that yarn in the description. And I'm working with a size I hook, which is 5.5 millimeters. Make sure that you use the hook that allows you to achieve the gauge. So please make a gauge swatch. I have a link to my lazy gauge swatch method, which only takes like a minute or 2 to do. So make sure that you take the time to do that so that your hat fits. And then you're going to start with the main color of your hat, the background color of your graph. And for me, that's navy blue. So we're going to start, this hat has worked from the bottom up. So we're going to start with a ribbed band. To make the ribbed band, you're going to chain 8. And then you're going to half double crochet in the second chain from the hook. And then half double crochet in each chain across. That gives you 7 half double crochet stitches all the way across. You're going to turn your work. You're going to chain 1. You're going to half double crochet through both loops of that same stitch. And then in the next 5 stitches, you're going to half double crochet in the back loop. The 2 loops on top, you're going to work in the second one, the one that's behind. So you're going to work a half double crochet in each of those stitches. And then when you get to that very last stitch, you're going to half double crochet through both loops. And I get questions about working the chain 1 or chain 2. You can do either. I just prefer the chain 1 because I feel like it helps the stretchy band kind of snap back into place. Whereas if there's 2 chains there, it kind of gets loosened out over time. But that is just my personal preference. So to finish the band, you're going to repeat that row. You're going to half double crochet in the same stitch going through both loops, and then half double crochet in the next 5 stitches going through the back loop. And then half double crochet in that last stitch going through both loops. And as you move on, as you're working it, it will look like kind of like nice ribbing. And then on the hat, it's gonna be like this, and you're gonna work across the top of it. So work that till you have about 19 inches. The 19 inches will be, you'll get your measurement when you gently stretch the band because you don't want it to be too big. They don't really snap back into place. So you want it to be a little bit snug so that your hat isn't stretched out over time. Okay, so I finished my band, and you can see that it's quite stretchy. It should be if you've used a nice squishy soft yarn and if you've achieved the gauge. But if not, just use your head and use your head as an idea of how long to make it. But if you have a nice stretchy band, tugging it gently and then measuring 19 inches should be the perfect size. So to turn this piece into a band, you're going to orient it so the loop is right there. And then fold this over. And then you're going to stick your hook through the one without the loop, grab the loop with your hook, and pull it through. And then you're going to slip stitch all the way across, sewing it together. Once you have finished slip stitching it together, you have this seam right here, this visible seam, so you're going to turn it like this so the seam is on the inside, and orient your piece so your loop is at the top. And then from here, you're going to work a round of single crochet around the top of the band. It's going to be slightly awkward because you are not working in stitches, you're just working along the sides of the stitches. And then depending on how many rows you worked and your gauge and your hook and your yarn, it's going to be different widths that it will take for you to achieve it. But the best thing to do is fold it in half and try to get about 35, 36 stitches from there, from the halfway point, and then you know that you're kind of on track. You're going to want to work a total of 72 stitches around the top. And this count is very important because you are working a graph, and for the graph to work out, you need exactly 72 stitches. So work 72 all around the top as your foundation for the hat body and for the graph. And you're going to join that round with a slip stitch. And then we're going to work one more round of single crochet, but this time you're going to work in the back loop only. So just like when we did the ribbed band, you worked in the back loop. You're going to work in the back loop only in the next round. So work one more round of single crochet stitches. You're going to chain one, single crochet in each stitch, working in the back loop only, all the way around, one stitch in each stitch. So 72 total. And then again, you're going to join that with a slip stitch. And here comes the fun part. This is the graph that you're going to be working. One single crochet equals each square on the graph. You're going to be working the graph from right to left, just the way that you would crochet, begin the round and work from right to left around the hat. You're going to start on the bottom right corner. That's the first row, and you can note that I have the row numbers in there, and it starts on row 3 because that's row 3 of the hat, so that can kind of keep you straight as to which row you're working. So the first row of the graph is row 3 of the hat, and you're going to start on the bottom right. And so it's going to involve carrying yarn, but if you're familiar with the plaid stitch, the plaid hat, it's exactly the same concept. So this one is going to be blue and red. This row is going to be blue and red. So the graph has, and again, you're going to be working in the back loops only. And the back loops only actually allows your graph to line up. For some reason, working in that back loop only allows the single crochets to sit nicely, like in a row. So just like the plaid stitch, you're going to work the stitch previous to the color change. You're going to work half the stitch, and then you're going to finish the stitch with the next color. So I worked half the single crochet, and to finish the single crochet I just need to yarn over and pull over. So I'm going to yarn over the new color. So when you start the next stitch, so this one's finished and it's completely blue, and then when you start the next stitch will be completely red. So I'm going to work one red stitch, and I'm only working one, so you kind of just only work half of one, and then finish it with the blue. And this makes your stitches look like the whole stitch is the one color. So you have to finish that last stitch with the next color when you're moving along. So the pattern for this row, and you're just working one row at a time from right to left, is 3 blue and 1 red. Be sure to click over to my blog and see I have it here. You can pause the video and watch it here, or you can go to my blog and see one that you can print. So it goes 3 blue, then 1 red, and you're just going to repeat that around the hat. And you're just going to I apologize, let me show you. You will be carrying the yarn. Now you don't necessarily have to carry the yarn. You can let it lay behind, and that's technically called fair isle. So as you're working it, it will look like it will have like the threads behind, and it will have them all along the back. Or you can carry the yarn. Or you can do the tapestry crochet method, which is carrying it. So you just lay it on top of the stitch. And when you put your hook into the loop, you're going to put it under your second color. And that way it's worked inside the stitch. So it doesn't show on the back and it doesn't show on the front. The only thing with this method is that you do need to kind of tug your stitch. So right here, you just kind of tug it just a tiny bit. Not enough. If you pull it too tight, then this stitch will close and it will pull it so tight that that stitch disappears. Tug it ever so slightly just to bring these stitches closer together, because if they're kind of loose, you'll see that red in there and you don't want to see the red. So you just pull it ever so gently to tighten up those stitches so that you don't see that color peeking through. So continue working the graph. The first few rows are pretty straightforward. You're going to be working with just your first and your second colors. But when you introduce the third color, it gets just a tiny little bit. It doesn't get complicated. It kind of slows you down just a little bit. So work your hat up to that point, and then we will introduce bobbins. Yay! I did want to quickly show you that when you're working this, it can be super frustrating because your yarn will get tangled, but the best way to keep it untangled when you're just working with two colors is to keep one of your yarn skeins to the front, one to the back, and then when you're switching, you always switch the back yarn to the back and the front to the front. So let me show you here. So I'm doing blue, so I'm going to put that back. The red is right here. I'm going to work my red stitch, and then I'm drop that to the front and grab the blue and continue on. So if you just be aware of which way you're using the yarn, because sometimes they'll get twisted around each other if you're pulling that one over and this one forward. Just be aware that your blues, whichever color is to the back, one's to the front, and make sure that you're setting them in that direction to keep your yarn from getting tangled. Okay, so we've reached row 10 of the graph, and this is where we're going to be introducing a third color in a row. So don't be intimidated by this. And you can carry both the colors if you want to, but I don't like to carry them because it kind of makes the cloth a little stiff and I just don't like it. And you only need a tiny bit because you're really only realistically working about 20 stitches with the color. So what I do is I wrap a little bit around these little bobbins. They're by DMC. There's a link to them in the description at the bottom of the video. So just wrap a couple feet, a couple yards onto the bobbin, and then you're going to join it when you're working that red stitch on the graph. And it's only one stitch right there. And then you'll just drop it. So you work the red stitch and then you just drop that red on the bobbin, and that just stays right there. So when you come back around, the red is right there for you to use. And you're going to use that, you're going to do that for the diamond shape, and then you're also going to do that for the center of the diamond. So when you're working the center of the diamond, it gets just a little bit hairy because you're going to have two reds. So you're going to have this red, you're going to start a red right here for this side of the diamond, and then a second red on the other side of the diamond. And then you're going to have a red in the center of the diamond. So it's going to be a little crazy there when you get into the middle. But once you're done with the middle part of the diamond, you get rid of those red bobbins, and then you're back to working with the 3 unit. You want to continue doing their method of putting one yarn in the front, one yarn in back. You may have to stop and untangle your reds because it does get a little bit tangled, but just work slowly and steadily and enjoy it. This color work is really fun. Okay, so finish your graph and I'll meet you back here. Okay, so we have finished our graph, so now it's time to close up the top of the hat. So what you're going to do is you're going to work one row of decreases. So you're going to work a double crochet, and you can work through both loops at this point. So you're going to work a double crochet in the same stitch, and then a double crochet decrease, or double crochet 2 together in the next stitch. And then alternate that double crochet decrease all around the top of the hat, and then join with a slip stitch. Okay, and we're going to join that yarn with this, or join that row with a slip stitch. And then for the last row, we're going to work another row of decreases, and this time you're going to work a decrease in each stitch. So chain 2, and then work double crochet 2 together stitches all the way around. Okay, and we're going to join that last round with a slip stitch, And that completes the crocheting part of the hat. So clip your end, pull that end through, and then to close the hat, you're going to turn it inside out. You're going to get a thick yarn needle. Then sew around the top, you're going to sew a loose running stitch. So just go in and out around the top. Okay, that brings us back to the beginning, so you're just going to cinch that hole tight, closing it. And make sure you tie a really, really sturdy knot. And then obviously you're going to need to take some time and weave in all those ends. And then if you want, you can finish with a pom-pom on top. And then your hat is finished.